the clavicle, under the pec minor, right? So they're in the front. They have to work their way to the back eventually. Now, they're right here, right? Pec minor's right here. Oh, we're pretty close to the armpit, aren't we? Sure enough, the radial nerve is the one that's going to run most in the armpit. They all kind of are around that area, but the radial nerve is the one that really goes through the armpit. Okay, now let's back up. What's the origin of the radial nerve? So we said the median nerve is from the anterior divisions of the upper and lower. That forms the lateral cord, right? And the anterior division of the lower forms the medial cord. And both together form the median nerve. So we got that one done. We said the anterior division of the lower forms the medial cord, and that's the ulnar nerve. We got that one done. What about the radial nerve? Yeah, posterior division of all three, right? That forms the what cord? Posterior cord, okay? And then what's a direct continuation of the posterior cord? As it goes anterior over the subscapularis muscle, remember in the picture, that's your posterior cord, and then it continues right down here into the armpit, and that's going to be a radial nerve. It's the largest nerve. What's the largest nerve in that lower extremity? Well, in the whole body, for that matter. Sciatic. Okay, what's the largest in the upper extremity? Okay. Again, these are terminal branches, all three of them, so they're mixed. They have motor and sensory. But the big picture on the radial nerve is everything motor in the back of the arm, in the back of the forearm. Everything. No exceptions. And then for sensory, same thing, but exceptions. It also goes into the hand, lateral 3.5 dorsal aspect, not all the way up, but part of the way up. And then the lateral lower cutaneous nerve of the arm. So don't get up to the deltoids. If you get up here, now you're on the axillary. Good. And that is the lateral, what? Superior, right? An inferior arm, and you have a superior arm. So the lateral superior cutaneous nerve would be up here in the deltoids, right? Okay. Okay, so armpit. And we've talked about this a little bit already, right? If it's in the armpit, if you have compression in the armpit, could that injure the nerve, the radial nerve? Yes. And we talked about two types of palsy. Saturday night palsy. You have a few too many to drink, and you come home and you put your arm over a chair, hanging down in the chair, and you fall asleep. And you wake up and you got all kinds of problems because you injured the radial nerve. The other is not adjusting the crutches properly. So you guys will learn how to adjust these crutches properly next semester. But it's important to know that how to adjust crutches. And if you don't expect the patient to know how to do it. I'm surprised my little Filipino party boy, remember with the ACL injury for 8 weeks on his crutches? I'm surprised he didn't come back with radial nerve crutch palsy too, in addition to all the other problems he had. Okay, but maybe he did, but I don't remember it anyway. Okay, so in the axilla, two branches are going to come off, and they're going to go down to the medial and the long triceps. Two branches, and then a sensory branch to the posterior arm. So right off the bat, basically, the three branches that come off in the armpit, you're thinking are right here. Well, they don't go very far, right? So what's right here? Posterior cutaneous nerve of the arm and medial and long triceps. Bingo. Okay, good. Then it's going to, from there, going to continue down, start going down the arm. Remember, it's more anterior at this point, so it has to go posterior. So remember that triangular interval I showed you? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, you got your teres major, you got your long triceps, and you got the humerus. That forms a triangle, and it goes through there. So that's a potential source of impingement. So it's going from anterior to posterior as it goes through there. And then it's just going to continue down posterior until it gets about halfway down. And then something's going to happen. It's going to change its course of travel. It's going to start traveling diagonally from medial to lateral. Remember, we're posterior already. But you're traveling diagonally like this. Can you picture it? Okay, so that's where it's going. And that's called the spiral groove, or the radial groove. That's another name. Good. Okay, spiral groove. Right above the groove is the origin of the lateral head of the triceps. And right below the groove is the origin of the medial of the tricep. So what do you think it innervates? Both of them. Okay, now remember we said the medial is already innervated, so sometimes it sends off a second branch. That happens. Okay? That's where it can get confusing sometimes when you're watching different things or learning about anatomy and so forth. You're saying, wait a minute, I already did that. How can it do it again? Right? Because sometimes you get these double branches. What else is in the area of this groove? Well, we just talked about over here, didn't we? Lateral inferior cutaneous nerve of the arm. So remember, this is radial nerve. Isn't it kind of in the area? Yeah, what else is in the area right below it? How about the anconeus? Okay. And what else is in the area that we haven't mentioned yet? We said the medial triceps or the long triceps. Lateral triceps. That's right there, right? The origin's right above it, the spiral groove. So basically it's sending these branches off. How many is that? If we count a second branch, that's 1, 2, anconeus 3. Yep, that's it, 3 motor. And then the one right over here. And then it sends one more branch off to go down here, which is the posterior cutaneous nerve of the forearm. So there's 5 branches. How many?
5.
Okay. Now, if you're reading some books and research articles and listening to anatomists or whatever, some might say 5 and some might say 4. Why? There might not be a second branch, right? See how it can get confusing sometimes? But anyway, that's how it basically works. Now we're going to work our way over. We're going from medial to lateral in the spiral groove. Okay. Now we're posterior. We have to get back anterior. So it's going to go through what? The lateral intermuscular section to do it. Okay, so it's going from posterior to anterior, and then it's going to travel down here. Can you guys see? This is what's this called? Lateral cubital fossa. That's where it's going. But look at, you see my finger? What's right across here? Not the biceps, but the brachialis, the deep part of it. So sometimes it'll send a branch to the brachialis. Not always, but oftentimes it does. Okay, now check it out. Look where I'm at. Didn't we just talk about a couple of muscles that are right here that originate on the lateral supracondylar ridge way up here? This is where the nerve is. It's going on the lateral cubital fossa. So what muscles do you think it's going to hit? Brachioradialis and extensor carpi radialis longus. Okay, so that's 2 muscles, and we already said the anconeus, or anconeus, as sometimes people like to call it. How many is that? Total. In the forearm. Posterior forearm. Well, remember we're counting the anconeus. Is the deep, is the proximal to deep, 1 to the 6. So how many so far? 3. Here's the significance of that. How many's left?
3. Wait.
Wait's a good response. Good job. 9. And here's the significance of that. All 9 of them is going to be innervated by one nerve branch. Okay, now here's what happens. The radial nerves make its way down here, correct? Aren't I about the level of the lateral condyle? Say yes, I am. Okay. Just a couple centimeters beyond that, you have your splitting, your final split. Your spinal, how about your final split? Okay, and what's it going to split into? A deep and a superficial. The deep, here's the importance of this. How many muscles are left? 9. The deep and its continuation, which is the posterior interosseous, gets all 9. They're the same nerve. Okay, and their motor nerve, what do we say the anterior interosseous is? C8T1. Just go down one level. What is this? C7, C8. Here's why this is helpful. What did I say it is? C7, C8. If you can remember that, What do you think all 9 of those muscles at interface is going to be? C7, C8. And then you just got to figure out, okay, what's the bolded one, right? But go back to your myotomes, and usually if anything thumb, general good rule is C8. And then go back to your myotomes, and you'll be able to figure it out. For example, what's this? Finger extension. C7. So it's a bolded. So you can figure out the bolded by using your myotomes and a little bit of deductive reasoning and remembering anything thumb is C8, whether you're extending or flexing. Now there's one little exception there, but let's not worry about the exceptions. Always got to be some troublemaker in this bunch, right? Never could be perfectly, life would be too easy. Okay, good. So your superficial is going to travel, what's this muscle? Brachioradialis. Your superficial is going to travel deep to it, and it's a century. What is it? Century. Okay, century. It's going to go deep, and then when it gets about 7 or 8 centimeters from the wrist, kind of where this watch is. So sometimes if you're wearing a really tight watch and you have it up a little bit high, it can compress, even if you don't have it up high. The nerve is going to branch up from under the brachioradialis and go between the brachioradialis and the other tendon that's right next to it, which is extensor carpi radialis longus, right? That's where it's going to become more superficial. And it's going right under the watch. So people that wear tight watches, sometimes it can get irritated and you can have pain right here. And that's called Wartenberg syndrome. What's it called? Syndrome. Where they have pain right in this area here, about 7 or 8 centimeters proximal to the wrist, which is about 3 inches. 1, 2, 3, right in this area. That's where you usually have it. And then it's going to continue down to superficial, right into this area right here. And that's where you get your sensation. Okay, so if you have this Wartenberg syndrome, you could have abnormal sensation all in this area here. Oh, the picture's still up there. See the picture? So it's your lateral 3.5 fingers and this dorsal web space. You see how it's kind of red? You have a higher density of receptors there, which means you're more likely to have abnormal sensation in places with higher density of receptors. Where else do you have a higher density of receptors? Finger pad. So you have a more likely to have abnormal sensation. Okay, that's sensory. And then the motor is what? The deep. Okay, and it's going to kind of wrap around the radial nick a little bit, and then it's going to go through 2 heads itself. Okay, look where I'm at. Now remember, we're deep now. So what are the 2 heads it's going to go through? What muscle is right over here? It's deep, supinator. And it has 2 heads too. So it goes through the 2 heads, and that's a potential source of impingement. Okay, but just before it goes through it, it says to itself, I'm right there, I might as well innervate it. And what else is kind of right there? What's next to the extensor carpi radialis longus? The breast. So it gets those 2 muscles. And then now what are we down to? 7. We were at 9, now we're at 7. And then it's going to go through this 2 heads of the supinator, and then it's going to travel along the posterior osseous membrane. What do you think the nerve changes its name to?
Posterior
osseous nerve. Just like you have an anterior osseous nerve, it's a posterior osseous nerve. And it gets the remaining 7 muscles. But here's what I want to caution you. If you read 10 different books, you could hear 10 different things. Because what do you know about the deep branch and the posterior osseous? They're the same nerve. They're the same nerve. The posterior osseous is just a continuation of it. Okay, so they're both C7, C8 motor nerves. Okay, so whether you call, sometimes authors would call all 9 of the muscles posterior osseous syndrome if it gets impinged between the 2 heads of the supinator. And sometimes they're called the deep branch, all 9, or sometimes they do a combination, like I just did a combination. Where I said the deep branch gets them, because when does the name change? And that's not completely agreed upon either. But it changes either when it's going through the 2 heads or when it exits the 2 heads, or when it penetrates the 2 heads. When it first starts going through, as it's going through, or when it goes out. I did like that for confusion. Is it important? Is it important? Not really. Not really. Why? It's the same nerve. It's the same nerve. And oftentimes this is called PIN syndrome. What does it stand for? Posterior neuroscious nerve syndrome. And where's the site of the syndrome? As it goes between the two heads and exits out of there, as it's X-rayed, it can be impinged. And then it's going to innervate the remaining 7 muscles. What's left? Whatever we covered for the superficial. The medial 3 superficial muscles. We haven't covered those yet. That's PIN. And the 3 anatomic snuff box muscles and the extensor indices. That's what's left. Okay? You okay with that? Now, that was the most detailed one. Do you agree? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things there. What could injure the radial nerve? Any of those impingement sites along the way. What kind of fracture could injure it in the arm? Yeah, mid-level, because that's where it goes in the spiral groove. Okay, so you want to start learning potential injury sites, and I have a lot of those in the PowerPoint too, as you're going through the PowerPoint as well. But practice that a little bit, and we'll go from there. Good job, Cameron.